Getting a new vehicle soon? Great. Are you going to buy it or lease it? That's the question everyone considers. Buy it or lease it. You've probably gone through this exercise, so which one makes more sense?
I think all customers should consider leasing versus buying. Leasing gives you all the benefits of ownership with no market risk. And again, what I mean by that is you never have to worry about being upside down in your vehicle.
Leases are designed to get you more vehicle for a lower monthly payment. The drawback is that there rarely is any equity for the leasee at the end of the term. So just how do they arrive at a lease payment?
There's set numbers from the manufacturer, from the leasing company, and then there's some variables. The variables are the price of the vehicle, which the dealer controls, the lease end value, the residual value, which is controlled by the manufacturer / leasing company, and then there's some things that are controlled by the leasee or the purchaser, and that's mainly mileage. How many miles are you doing?
So one key to a great lease is residual value. The more the vehicle is worth at the end of the lease, the better deal you are likely to get.
Cars with the highest resale value will typically have the best lease programs, and that's why Toyotas make so much sense, and so many people lease Toyotas because of the strong resale value.
So therefore, some vehicles make more sense to lease.
Absolutely. There are some vehicles are great lease vehicles, and some just are not. And the biggest piece of that is the resale market. With a lease, you're putting out less money up front, you're putting out much less money in a payment, and at the end of the 3-year lease, versus if you purchased the vehicle and financed it, if you looked at where you stood at the end of 3 years purchasing it and 3 years financing it, you've saved thousands of dollars.
Here at Colonial, we lease almost 65% of our new car business, which is about 8% more than the national average. But because their programs are so strong and the lease end values are so high, it just makes sense to drive a new Toyota every couple of years instead of playing the finance game every 5.
Okay, so what about buying? Getting a loan and financing the vehicle. The good thing is, if you pay it off, you own it and own whatever value the vehicle still holds, plus you no longer have a car payment.
Well, a lot of the consumers that we work with, we focus on trying to have a payment that is affordable to them, and sometimes that does require a loan to be 6 or 7 years in duration. The important thing is that again, the quality of the vehicle is there to support the value, because at the end, they want to be able to trade in that vehicle and have some equity that they've built up, so that they have a down payment going into the next transaction.
And with any contract, know what you are agreeing to. Understand the worst case scenarios.
The lease option is attractive to folks who want to have as a requirement as little down up front and to keep their monthly payment as small as possible. But what we find is that if they look at the fine print in the contract, there are obligations that they have at the end of the term related to wear and tear, damage, mileage, that increases the overall cost. And at the end of the day, we often find that leasing costs the consumer more than owning and financing with a traditional car loan.
So what about mileage? If you go over the miles, you will pay. But many dealers actually say it makes more sense to lease if you drive high miles.
You can purchase more mileage than the typical 12 to 15,000 miles, and you can purchase it for a very cheap amount of money. Building extra mileage into a lease is 10 cents a mile. It's virtually, you can't drive a car for 10 cents a mile. It costs you more than that as you put more mileage on the car. So the manufacturer, by letting you purchase mileage at only 10 cents a mile, is taking on the brunt of the depreciation that you're putting into that car.
A lot of people think they're not candidates to lease because they do too many miles, when in actuality they do too many miles to buy. And what I mean by that is you purchase a vehicle and buy the vehicle. You finance the vehicle for 72 or 84 months with little or no money down. 3 years from now, when you go to trade that vehicle in, the vehicle has 60, 75,000 miles on it. And again, you most likely are going to owe more than what the vehicle's worth. At least with the lease, there's a predetermined residual at the end.
One bit of good advice: if you plan to lease, don't put a lot of money down.
If you were to put $4,000 or $5,000 down on a lease. Leave the dealership in 2 months, total the car. Your insurance company will pay your lease company to satisfy the lease. If they're not paying the value of the car, that $4,000 or $5,000 you put down is now gone, and your insurance company is not obligated to get it back to you.
So finally, here are some takeaways. Don't forget to consider the vehicle's residual value. It's best not to put a large down payment on a lease. Even if you drive 20,000 miles a year or more, it still may make sense to lease and prepay the miles up front. Read the lease contract and understand what you're getting into and know what happens if the vehicle is totaled. If you put low miles on a vehicle and you're fine with keeping it for 7, 8 years or more, then it might make more sense to buy it. So do your homework, ask lots of questions, and happy car shopping.